The tall, gangly thing?
Hello and welcome. Today I am joined by Bryce Blum, aka Esports Law, TFT caster, competitive player, and a pretty notable TFT community member. Bryce, thanks so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love your content and it's fun to be a part of it.
So for anyone who's not super familiar with who you are, why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to give my bio in this context, actually, because I'm really used to giving it in a different context, right? The people watching this probably don't care at all. I'm a full-time lawyer. I work in the esports space. My law firm is the only dedicated esports law firm, and we represent essentially the who's who of Western esports teams, and have for a long time. Cloud9, Team Liquid, TSM, Evil Geniuses, so on and so forth. And then as a side thing, I just became someone who was obsessed with TFT like everybody else, right? It was the most fun I have ever had playing a game, probably period, but definitely the only comparable moment I can remember in my life was when I started playing League of Legends a literal decade ago in season 1. And it was just like immediately there was something different about it. I knew I was going to be investing at a different level and for a longer period of time. And so I became, part of the community. I hit Challenger for the first time in set 2 and just have ever since. I've peaked out, somewhere I think around 10th or 11th on the NA ladder, and then started casting on the side and found that I had this love of casting and I'm really trying to invest in that and be kind of one of the marquee casters, if that's available to me moving forward for TFT esports as we continue to grow.
Between the law firm that you run, also competing, casting, you've clearly had a large array of different experiences in esports. Can you kind of give a little bit of background and history on your experience in esports? Is TFT kind of your first foray into the actual competition side?
Yeah, it definitely is in the competition side. I've always been a good but not great player of whatever game. So I think my general threshold is I peak out around the top 1%, right? So I peaked out mid-diamond in League. I was like a 3600 SR player in Overwatch early, and that's kind of tracks across basically all my different games. And whatever game I invest in, I tend to invest exclusively into that game and get pretty good but never great. TFT, I think, is just a perfect melding where I played professional poker back in the day, and I think a lot of those skills really translate here. And so I could tell right away that my natural skill set for the game and therefore my skill ceiling was just higher than they were for other games. And so I kind of knew early on that I theoretically could take a run at competitive if I could invest the time.
Bouncing off of that, just talking about different trajectories, you've had quite the trajectory going from being a competitive player as early as set 1 to working the broadcast as an analyst for Worlds in set 4. Can you talk a little bit about that, the differences, the preparation for events, how it's all different?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different, right? I mean, I think my strength as a caster is probably my knowledge, right? I'm probably the highest ranked caster. I think Crowan's another notable exception of someone who has obviously been a high challenger player, competed at the highest level and done a lot of broadcast talent work for TFT. But aside from him, there really aren't a lot of like super high elo players, right? That have been regularly challenger since the early days of the game that are casting. And so I can speak to the game from that perspective. And so on some level, the prep is the same, right? Play a lot, watch streams, know what's good, why it's good, and what are the different paths to get there so you can talk about them and educate the audience. For me, the big difference, though, is understanding that being a world-class broadcast talent requires a lot of technical work. You need to really think about when and how you're bringing the energy, what language you're using to describe the game, how to develop really cohesive flow with your co-caster, right? And I've been fortunate to co-cast alongside, Froden and Doa and Boop and some really great casters that have a lot more experience than me in casting. And that has made my transition a lot easier because I can get a lot of really good feedback from them. And I can just kind of lean on the fact that they're consummate pros, right? They're so good at what they do that it's easy to kind of build off of that and try to add value where I can.
Something that is really special about TFT that I feel personally is that it's one of the few knowledge-based games where there's a very clear trajectory of as you learn more about the game, you improve because there's not really that mechanical level that a lot of other games have. But it's interesting because what you're kind of saying is that casting is kind of mechanic, so to speak, where on top of having the game knowledge, there's like an extra level there. So I guess the question there is does improving as a caster, is there actually a 1-to-1 correlation of improving as a player? What is it what's that missing piece of getting better as a caster that doesn't necessarily put you at a top player level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a little bit of all of this, right? The knowledge is a huge part of what I'm bringing to the table for sure, but the technical element, right? It's the equivalent of mechanics in a game, right? And you're right, there's like more mechanically going on, at least as my brain sorts that, and it sounds like the way yours does as well, for trying to go down this path of being a caster versus being a pro player, right? I would watch back my VODs and I would try to study to improve my mistakes as a player. I'm doing similar things as a caster, but I'm also just thinking about the technical control of my voice, how to be providing analytical information while providing energy. Because it's amazing, right? Like when you're playing TFT, you're using the deeply analytical parts of your brain. These are not things that are like naturally congruous with getting super hyped in a big moment where like someone has just engaged in this insane positional outplay or made a large pivot or whatever. And as a caster, it's not just your job to communicate information. It's also your job to make it fun and engaging, right? And when you think about the best casts of all time, they're not always like a deep analytical moment. I mean, there are so many good examples, but one of my favorites of all time was actually Doa's call on the Faker 1v1 outplay, right? One of the more iconic league clips of all time. And the fact that he just screams, "Faker, what was that?" in the moment is what makes it so special, right? It's like it adds to the hype of the moment because he's able to express perfectly in real time what it felt like to be a viewer, which is like, I have no idea what the hell just happened, but that was incredible, right? And that's true of not just in esports, but of traditional sports. And so I'm trying to think through not just how do I communicate the best information, but also like what is the most effective way to do that. And there is an incredible amount of technical skill that goes into it.
I love it. Yeah, that's incredible insight on a subject that I think is hard for a lot of people to understand,
Totally.
especially because TFT and this style of game is so new. Now, I'd love to move on to something I know I'm excited about. I'm sure you're excited about. That is that Set 5 is coming out one week from today, I believe, is actually the release on live.
Yep.
Have you gotten a chance to play it on PBE? What are your thoughts on the new set mechanic?
Yeah, I've played a little bit. I've played fewer than 10 games, I think, so less than I want to. I'm hoping to find more. It's been a busy work time for me, so hopefully I have more time to invest in PBE. But my perception is that it's going to be really good. I mean, look, it's early days. There's for sure going to be balance issues. Every set that has ever come out, that is the case. Right? There's no way around that on some level. But the mechanic is providing so much player agency that it feels like it's going to reward the things that I love most about TFT, which is the flexibility, right? Adapting on the fly. I really don't like the game when you can one trick and be successful. And I think that the new set mechanic is going to do, and that's part of what the chosen mechanic was designed to do, right? It was, hey, you get this chosen. It might not be what you want to play, but like, how can you pass this opportunity to play this other thing that you clearly have been given a path for? I think this is going to do that, but even better. And it's going to make it feel like there's so much more control. And in a game of variance, a mechanic that makes you feel like you have more control is just it makes the game so much more fun, at least for me as like a highly competitive player. I could see why a more casual player might enjoy some of the more RNG elements of the game. And I do. Part of what I love about TFT is the RNG, but I think the building blocks of Set 5 are incredible. I also think they went to school on part of what made, in my opinion, 4.5 a little bit weaker as a set than 4, right? Like this transition towards inflexibility in the carries, a lot of melee physical damage carries, right? And we realized in hindsight, like actually that that makes it a tougher game to balance and a tougher game to play around in some ways. And so like, I love, for example, having Draven and Aphelios in the same set, right? I love this theory of having Vel'Koz and Karma as two, also staple AP carries that you can build around. And it's clear that they're thinking about the balance between some of these more flexible comps and also having like really fun, powerful vertical synergies. So in my opinion, every TFT set has been better than the one before it in pretty material ways. And the limited exposure I've had to Set 5 makes me think that that's the case as well.
Yeah, something you said that really stood out to me is talking about how you're saying you enjoy the game most when you can't just one trick and force the same comp over and over. Set 4 really did break the the model of being able to do that. And even though we did see there was one tricking in Set 4, but compared to other sets, we didn't really have someone who could just play one comp all set long. And now transitioning into Set 5, there really is a clear progression of Set 4 training people to play flexibly into Set 5, giving players more agency. Yep. And now I think we're really going to be seeing, can players take the tools that they learned from Set 4 and apply them to really flourish in set 5. So it's really, really exciting. And talking about the different sets, one thing that we also saw a lot of progression was the competitive scene in set 4. We really saw a huge difference. We had the open bracket for amateur players. We had a ton of qualifiers throughout the entire set. We also had a pretty rigorous qualification process for Worlds. So what I'd love to know is, what is it that you're looking for in the competitive format of set 5?
Yeah, I think you had a really good North American lens on that. I think that I would love to see some of the pathways for the different regions, in particular Europe, to be improved and up to that standard, right? Because there are so many great players in the European region that I would love to see them getting similar treatment in terms of creating a longer term pathway to qualification that gives them more opportunity to compete, more opportunity to separate themselves from the pack, and also to reduce variance, right? I mean, it's part of what I love about the genre, but the competitive formats always have to be a balance between making something that's fun and exciting to watch in the moment, but also is going to, look, we're never going to find a world in which you're always surfacing the absolute best player. That's an unrealistic goal. As someone who comes from poker, that's actually, I think, not the correct goal when you're trying to build a competitive ecosystem around a game like this. But you have to find a little bit of a middle ground. And so finding how to build that, I think, is part of the journey of TFT Esports. And I think we've seen a lot of iteration of that. Each set has gotten better, and I'm hopeful the same thing will happen in this set as well.
Definitely, yeah. And I think having a certain level of variance is a part of what makes TFT so accessible to new players, right? And even going back to NA having the open bracket, having a clear path for anybody who has a good weekend can take a shot against some of the best players in the world. And there's something exciting and so accessible, and I think something that's very helpful and healthy for the overall health of TFT. You've talked a lot about all the different things you do. You're a lawyer full time. You play. You cast. I believe you're married as well. So you've got a lot going on in your life, and somehow you're able to do it all. There are a lot of people who kind of have different things going on in their life, and they find it very hard to focus on the things they still want to do. Can you kind of give some insight on how you do that?
Oh, interesting. I'm happy to talk about. I've thought a lot. I've kind of min-maxed my life on some level, right? Like I think that a lot of people have these approaches to the games that they want to play, and they can have focused improvement at a game over time, and they don't necessarily apply a lot of those same skill sets to the real world. And I think that's a mistake. Like, I think a lot of why I'm able to do what I'm able to do is because I am focused on improving in the areas of my life in which I am weakest, and that allows me to use my time better throughout a day. So I am very thoughtful about planning around my gym time and planning my wake up times and my work windows versus my non-work windows. And I am very good at forcing myself to be focused in those periods of time when I need to be focused, right? I think a lot of people struggle with distractions, particularly in a COVID world where they're working from home. I guess it's hard for me to do this in like a short way, because I've actually spent a lot of time like thinking about this and building the blocks of my life that allow me to do this. But if I had to summarize it, I would say that there is a level of intentionality to everything that I do that enables me to kind of have my cake and eat it too, and be a good husband to my wife and a future father to my child. I'm having my first kid in a month, actually, which is really exciting, and it allows me to do all this different stuff. And you have to make sacrifices, right? I mean, part of the reason why I'm transitioning from trying to, aspire to be a pro player into a caster, first of all, I love casting, and I never expected to be a path, and it's been so fun, and I kind of fell into it, and now I'm running with it. But also, just for being honest, like, I've never been able to invest the level of time I need to in TFT as a player to be able to actually compete at the highest level, or even obtain what I think is my personal possible skill ceiling. I mean, I played fewer games, despite the fact that I played since set 1, I played fewer games across all of the sets combined than many of the top NA players have over the course of just this set. And I'm talking just 4.5, right? Not 4 and 4.5. And so that's, I have to be intentional about that. I can't just play as much TFT as I want to and be able to do all these other things. There are trade-offs. And so for me, it's just about, okay, if this is my goal in TFT, I'm going to invest however much time I think I need to get there, but also be cognizant of like when I need to take breaks or when I can't invest into that, right? And I will approach my ladder strategy differently, by the way, just as an aside. Like, there are times when I know I'm in climbing mode. Like I know I understand all the fundamentals of the different meta comps and I can play them really well and therefore climb. And there are times when I'm like, I have not been able to invest that time. I need to think of my games as purely avoiding decay for this period of 2 weeks. And so I'll play strategies that are, far less likely to climb really hard, but might allow me to consistently in that top fours and just hopefully protect my LP and move on. So, it's a kind of funny micro example, but I'm doing similar things in each different area of my life.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, Bryce, your work ethic really is inspiring to me, and I hope that those words are inspirational to someone who's watching that. It really does make a difference. I think you can kind of find a way to prioritize your life in a way that allows you to improve in the things that you want to improve and also have access to the other parts of your life that are really important. But Bryce, that's everything I have for you. Before we go, is there anything you'd like to shout out?
I mean, shout out Riot for making an amazing game. I love TFT so much. I feel so fortunate to be a member of this community. I feel like so many people have kind of wrapped their arms around me and welcomed me, even though I'm, in some ways an outsider, right? Like I don't play as much as a lot of these people. I'm considerably older than a lot of the people in the community, right? And I just feel so welcome and appreciative of that fact. So I'm just excited. I know a lot of people get frustrated about where we're at right now. No spectator mode, still a lot of room for growth and development in esports. I guess it's not a shout out, but if I could say one final thought, it would just be, I've been around esports for a while, right? I have worked across every major esport over the course of my career, and I've seen what the growth trajectory of an esport looks like. We're still in the really early days of this thing, right? I know everyone says, oh, it's Riot Games. They're so big. How can they not have already done X, Y, Z things? And it's like, listen, it's a big company, but a lot of the prioritization is in other places. League of Legends is still massive. Valorant is huge, right? And a game that they had invested so much in. Give it time. There are positive signs of what's happening in and around the game TFT and the esports ecosystem specifically. So I, for one, am super optimistic about what the future holds for TFT.
Thank you, man. Yeah, seriously. Thanks for sitting down with me. And for those of you who are watching, thanks for getting through this interview. For more TFT content, guides, and interviews, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.